Good morning. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. How are you today?
Great. Thank you.
Wonderful to hear. It is now 12 noon, and that's the scheduled time for the webinar. However, with your permission, I'd like for us to wait at least 2 minutes again to allow other persons who have registered for the webinar to join the session, please. Is that okay with all of us here?
Yes, it is.
Thank you very much. I'll see you again in 2 to 3 minutes. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I trust that all is well with you and your families. I want to wish you a very good Tuesday afternoon and thank you for joining us today. My name is Lisa Joseph and I am the Dean of the School of Continuing Education of the National Energy Skills Center. It is with great pleasure that I welcome all of you to our 8th free webinar series. Today, we will be presenting on the area of computer operations, and we will be providing some guidelines to ensure an increase in office productivity. However, before we do so, please allow me to share the following guidelines with you. Kindly place your mics on mute. At this time, we ask you to please hold all your questions until the end of the first segment, where your questions will be facilitated by our speaker today, Mr. Joseph Alexander. And of course, you're invited to feel free to use the chat option to send your questions in advance. As mentioned earlier, this is our 8th webinar, and we have recognized that many persons have basic knowledge required to operate a computer. And can we agree that there may be specific computing operations which can improve our productivity? I am sure we can. Our intention today is to identify challenges experienced in this modern workforce and provide you with troubleshooting skills to solve these computing issues, and you're going to do that on your own today. So we welcome our local, regional, and international stakeholders who have joined us on this session on Microsoft Teams and also live on Facebook. I now take this opportunity to introduce you to our facilitator, Mr. Joseph Alexander, who will share a little more about himself, his career, and on this very exciting topic of increasing office productivity through the use of computing. From all of us here at the School of Continuing Education and from the management and staff of the National Energy Skills Center, I now invite you to please enjoy the session. Mr. Joseph Alexander, I now hand over to you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I'm going to share my screen at this time. So, hi everyone. One sec. Today, and again, thank you so much, Lisa, for that nice introduction. Today, as we have heard, our topic is computer operations, efficiency, and troubleshooting. And what I'm going to be discussing with you today is about just how serious, and I think as we go through this session, you're going to realize that, just how serious the challenge of computer literacy in the office environment actually is. One of the things that takes place is that a lot of businesses don't realize, a lot of organizations as well, they don't realize the large impact that in the area of computer literacy, the large impact that a failure to have a good understanding of computing, of computer operations, of computer applications, the large impact that actually has on productivity and efficiency of your workers. As a matter of fact, when we go into this, you're going to see that in this area, you can end up losing, let's say at the end of a work week, if you have persons who are not properly trained and skilled in the area of computing, you can lose 2, 3, 4, 5 hours of productivity just due to the fact that basically you have users that simply aren't trained in the use of computers. So I hope that this session will be insightful to you and that you'll enjoy. So let's begin with a quick topic overview of what I'm going to be discussing. So we'll begin with a little introduction. We're going to talk about computers in the workplace, and we'll also talk about the SOCE a little bit on our business computing series that we have launched. We're going to touch on computer operations, things like the operating system, working on a company network, the importance of understanding file paths and extensions, etc. Then we're going to go into the computer efficiency aspect. And this is where I'm going to demonstrate and show you just how important it is to be able to efficiently function on the computer, and because of the fact that it has a large impact, as I mentioned before, a large impact on your overall workforce productivity. So we'll talk about some Windows features in the computer that could really, in the time that, let's assume one task that you're doing, sometimes just using a Windows feature can cut down the length of time you take to do a task by half. We're going to talk a little bit about some keyboard shortcuts, and we'll of course talk about Microsoft Office, because in the modern work environment, Office is standard now. In any work environment you go into, you have to be able to use Microsoft Office. And interestingly, we have so many persons in the work environment using Office, and really and truly they have never actually been trained to use Microsoft Office. They probably pick up a thing here or there. We're going to see just how serious that is when it comes to the impact on efficiency. And lastly, we'll talk about computer troubleshooting, some common errors, right? PC maintenance. And these are skills that your office workers really should have. Simple PC maintenance skills, because they are working at a computer almost for the entire working day. And they wouldn't have to be calling IT consistently to deal with things which really and truly they can solve on their own. And we'll end with learning the skills of communicating with IT technicians. All right, so that's a little topic overview of what we're going to be discussing. And again, I hope you enjoy. So let's begin with our little introduction section. And we'll talk about myself firstly. So I am, as mentioned before, Joseph Alexander. And really and truly, I started, when it comes to IT, I started this area of IT by just playing video games when I was younger. That's really how I got into IT. I was always playing computer video games, and my mom was basically like, listen, if you're always on the computer, you're always playing video games, let's say go and do your studies in that field. And I took her advice. And that's basically really what propelled me into the field of IT. And from there, of course, I went on to do my studies, and that was my degree in business computing. And what I liked about that degree is that it focused on using computing skills, but in the business environment, because there are some IT degrees where they focus a lot on the IT technical part, and there are some degrees like the one I did, which marries basically how you use IT technology in the actual business and work environment. So that's what I did my degree in. And then I went on to do my MBA. And I gained a passion for teaching really at around 20 years old. Started teaching in my local church assembly, interestingly. And that's where I started teaching youths, young people, mentoring youths, teaching Sunday school classes, teaching youth meetings. That went on to doing actual Bible study sessions, Sunday morning teachings. And from there, that's where I progressed more and more into the teaching field and went into officially teaching IT. But this really started at the age of 20. That's how long I've been. Not gonna make you guess my age, but that's how long I've been in this field of teaching, right? So from there, as I mentioned, doing IT teaching and now being an actual facilitator, teaching companies and businesses in the area of IT. So let's talk a little bit now about modern society. Now, computers have become, as we all know, a standard part of modern society. Computers are now a standard part of the modern life of a person. And knowing how to use a computer, interestingly, is now becoming just as important as being able to read and write. You could believe that, but that's really how serious it is now. And that's really where computers have become now. As a matter of fact, if you, and you can think about this for yourself, when was the last time, compare how much you do writing with a pen and pencil with how much you do typing. And you would realize, of course, that the reality is the vast majority of time you spend doing actual typing. The vast majority of reading you do is generally from either a computer screen or your phone screen. So modern technology has taken over our society so much that having that knowledge of how to use and function with a computer is, if you don't have that, it's almost like not having the ability to read and write. It's that important and it's that serious. Now, one of the things that happened in our modern times is the situation with COVID-19. And what COVID-19 did, which is, it really exposed a challenge in our society. And what it did is that it exposed just how far behind really that many businesses are in training their workers in the area of IT. Because now when we had the COVID-19 pandemic, so many things had to now transition into online. So many things had to transition to being on the computer. And when that transition takes place, a lot of organizations realize that, wow, you know, there are a lot of things that my workers don't actually know and understand how to do on the computer. There's Zoom, now there's Microsoft Teams, and there are other collaboration tools that are being used online. Some organizations use Moodle and things like that. And the reality is a lot of persons just don't understand how to use these things. And on top of that, on top of not being able to use these tools, they also have challenges in even operating on a computer system to begin with. So could you imagine how that problem is being compounded there? Because now on one hand, you have people who already have challenges in IT literacy. And then on top of that, now you want to have them using these online tools and these online programs. And with COVID-19, of course, we know that a lot of activities, even with the government, they're encouraging you to do things online now, right? Encouraging you to do transactions online now. So online activity using the internet and online activity has vastly increased. And let's transition that now into the actual workplace, right? Computers in the workplace. One of the things that I think we need to understand is that computer literacy in the workplace is a very, very serious problem. It's a very, very serious problem. And think about this, and if you have employers listening in here, think about when you're hiring persons, do you actually ask to have official training in computer literacy? Now, I've worked in several places, and I can tell you, you would hire a person, and people just assume, really, that a person knows how to use Word, Excel, PowerPoint. People just assume that, when really and truly that is not the case. And in my experience as an IT technician, I can tell you, there are simple things, basic things in Word, Excel, Outlook, PowerPoint, which are the common office apps used in the work environment, that people really just don't know how to do. And it's because they really haven't done official training in these areas. People just assume that, and employers just assume that, well, you know, this person knows how to use Word, Excel, PowerPoint, just assume that, okay, they probably have the knowledge of how to operate in Windows 7, they probably have the knowledge of how to operate in Windows 10. But really and truly, that is not the case. And one of the things that happened with computers in the workplace as well is that you even have institutions that were doing a lot of training. So, for example, the NASC, the MIC, right? Now, one of the things that I have friends from a lot of these training institutions, and a lot of times, well, they know I'm in the field of IT, and they'll call me, you know, frantic, and it's like, how to do this, how to do that. You know, one person called me and said they put me on this thing called the Moodle. I don't understand how to use this thing, right? They put me on this thing called Microsoft Teams. I'm not sure how to really navigate on this thing. So it exposes, as I mentioned, this challenge in the workplace, and even persons who, teachers, instructors who generally they never really did much work on the computer. And look at that, during this pandemic here, we had instructors who generally weren't using computers much, and now they are forced to have to run training online. Now, what is that going to do? Obviously, it's going to bring up and expose the challenges that we have in the area of IT. So now we have computers in the workplace, as I mentioned, becoming very, very important, and it's exposing that problem. Now let's talk about some more common challenges with IT. Again, as I said, there's a great lack of any formal IT training, a great lack of formal IT training in the workplace. And many persons now are learning through trial and error, really. So a lot of persons, the things that they know in terms of how to use Word, Excel, PowerPoint, how to use Windows 7, how to use Windows 10, how to navigate through, is really from trial and error. They clicking things, checking things. And many times, as I said, being an IT technician, I have a lot of experience in seeing these things firsthand. And there are some persons that really just have no idea. And they click in, they check in, they Google in, trying to find out how to do things, because, as I said, they haven't really done much formal training in the area of IT, or any formal training in using the applications, the office applications. So due to this problem, there's a massive impact on efficiency in the modern workplace. And I want to highlight that there's a massive impact on efficiency in the modern workplace, because a person who has that knowledge on how to use the computer effectively, how to use these apps effectively, is obviously going to complete tasks way faster than another person. But let me give you a good example of this situation. Now, there was one time where my dad and I, we were building, it was a cupboard, something that we purchased, right? So we were building this thing up, and I had to use, now think about this, right? I had to use a screwdriver. We're talking about a screwdriver here, right? I think everybody will be like, I mean, I know how to use a screwdriver. I don't need any training in how to do that. So I was using it, putting things together. And my dad came, he looked at me, and he was like, you know, the way you're holding the screwdriver and the angle that you're using it there, it's really not effective here. And he showed me a different way on how to do it. And I was amazed at just a simple change in how I use the screwdriver, and a simple change on how I angle myself to do the job. I was finishing building this thing way faster, almost twice as fast. Now, what is the situation there? Would anyone think that they need training to use a screwdriver? Probably not. I don't think anybody, if anybody were to say, you know, come let me give you some training in how to use a screwdriver, you'll probably laugh at that. But the reality is, look at that simple example. So we're talking about a simple thing like a screwdriver there. Think about a complex device like a computer that has so much complex capabilities, so much features, so much things that it has to do. And people are really unaware of that. And what happens is the same thing that I gave the example with me using that screwdriver. Whereas one person who has that knowledge, has that skill, has that training, would be able to complete a computing task. It finishes in about 15 minutes, half an hour. Another person without that skill, without that knowledge, without that training, can take 45 minutes up to an hour and even beyond to do the same exact task. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about massive loss of productivity time that is taking place every day in offices throughout Trinidad and Tobago. And I can tell you, I've seen it firsthand as an IT technician. It's a big problem. And I'm hoping as time progresses that people take IT training more seriously. And this is, and we're going to talk about the invisible problem. The invisible problem simply means that people just don't know. People just don't know what or how much the impact of their lack of knowledge in IT is having on them. It's just like, and bring back that example with the screwdriver again. I was using that screwdriver building up my thing. In my mind, there is no problem. In my mind, I know exactly what I'm doing. In my mind, I'm getting the job done. But it was an invisible problem to me, meaning not that the problem doesn't exist, but I'm not seeing it. I don't realize, or I don't know that my lack of training or my lack of skill in a simple thing, like how to angle myself and how to hold a screwdriver properly, I wasn't aware and I didn't see the large impact it was having on the productivity time that I have. And this invisible problem, as I said, is an invisible problem both to workers and many employers, because again, I'll say employers hire people and they see the person using the computer, getting the job done. So in their mind, there isn't really a problem here. There isn't really a challenge here. But if they were to see, and if they were to realize, and workers as well, if they were to see that, hey, listen, the task that you are doing, you could finish that, 50%, you can have an increase in productivity of 50% just by having a little extra skill in computing. So that brings me quickly to the SOCE, School of Continuing Education. And what we have launched now is a business computing series. And this series of training is targeted specifically for this problem. It's a series of training that targets the office worker, giving them the skills and the abilities so that they can be more effective in the work environment. So we have a lot of training in all the Microsoft apps. We have training in the Google apps. We have training in using Windows 7 or Windows 10. We have training on how to set up projectors, training in basically when you have to maintain your computer at your desk, training in a lot of areas. And really the aim of what the SOCE wants to do in this business computing series is increase office productivity throughout Trinidad and Tobago. And that is our aim, and we hope that you will join in with us. So let's talk in a little bit more about computer operations. So there are operating systems on the computer, as we know, Windows 7, Windows 10. And this is software that basically manages the hardware on your computer, right? So it manages the operating system, basically manages everything, really. So these are things like Windows 7, Windows 10. Now let's ask ourselves a simple question. How many persons have actually done any official training in using Windows 7 or Windows 10? Where you did an official course, and in the course, they trained you and they told you about all of the common features in using Windows 7 or Windows 10. The reality is not much people have done that. And again, people think, well, yes, I know how to use the operating system. I know how to use Windows 10. Well, the problem actually is exposed when people have to do particular tasks. And let me give a good example. Very often as an IT technician, you go around the person's desk and you see people leaning over, squinting over like this, looking into a computer screen. right? And I'm like, what is this? There are simple features that you can use to zoom quickly in and out while you're using Windows 10. There are simple features that you can use. Some persons click between multiple screens. There are simple features that you can use to bring all these three screens up at the same time and work together simultaneously without having to keep clicking back and forth, minimizing back and forth, opening things back and forth. But people aren't aware of these things. And it has a severe impact, of course, on their productivity. And simple things as well, like I mentioned, how to maintain your computer. Simple things like when you're using your operating system and you have to connect a projector. How do you do that? Many people call IT departments to do these things, which of course is a loss in productivity time when you can simply do that for yourself. Another thing many instructors don't know about, if you're using your projector and you're using Windows 10, you can share and you can have your screen doing your personal work, and on the projector screen you have something separate for the students. So while you're showing them one thing, you're working on something separately. You know, many times I've seen persons sharing up their screen, and while they're doing multiple things, while they're teaching multiple things, right, the student getting to see all that they are doing. And there are many, many different tools, as I mentioned, to overcome all of these problems. Sometimes, another reason why it's important to learn about these things is you get called quickly to do something. You get called quickly to present. You get called quickly to go on Microsoft Teams. What are some quick tips that you can learn and how to present properly? If there's a challenge where, okay, again, I'm trying to share my screen and something is going wrong, what are some alternative solutions I can do to get around this problem? People aren't aware of those things, and it causes problems. There's also the taskbar and the notifications. So the taskbar has a bar at the bottom of your screen in Windows 7 or 10, we know that. But a lot of notifications come up. What do those notifications mean? How do I get around when I have challenges in using the taskbar? Something comes up, and many times this often happens, and I've, as I said, as an IT technician, I've dealt with this many, many times. People call, I see something pop up on the screen there, I see a notification come up here. I don't know what to do. What does that mean? Because people just aren't trained in using Windows 7, Windows 10, and using the operating system. Logging in is another big problem. What's the proper way to log into a domain? Some people don't even know what's a domain, right? So a domain, you can think of your organization, and a domain is like a certain section in your organization where you reside and your account resides. So when you're logging in, you have to log into a particular domain. Very, very often, very, very frequently with IT technicians, people have problems logging in. People not logging into the domain properly. There's a particular way to type when you have to log in to your domain. And you have to use, for example, /. You have to change, if you want to change, a big problem that we encounter, some people, instead of logging into the domain, they log into the actual computer itself. That's a problem. And again, the issue is, has the organization come forward and trained people in this area? And the reality is they have not, and it causes a lot of problems. Navigating on the computer network, the company network, sorry. People have company networks set up with files located all over the place, and people just don't know how to navigate on the company network and find files because they aren't trained in that particular area. And of course, now we have situations like using Microsoft Teams, using Zoom. And I know I'm mentioning a lot about my experience here, but it's important that you hear this, because again, I've seen constantly I've seen being part of training sessions, being part of Zoom sessions, being part of team sessions, and users just don't know how to use these things. And what you have organizations doing is just basically throwing people into the water and just telling them, you learn to swim by yourself. Or an IT technician you might call an IT technician, they'll tell you, yeah, you click this and click that. And then they go on, and you really have no idea how to navigate and how to use these things, because again, official training in these things isn't done. I've seen it a lot on Zoom. People don't know how to use Zoom effectively, causing a lot of problems in that area as well. Also, in computer operations, there's file path and file extension. Learning how to find a particular file that's located somewhere in your computer, understanding what file extensions mean. So for example, you have a file and it says .rar at the end. Sometimes, and this has often happened, you open your computer, there's a file there, but no program can open the file. What do I do in a scenario like that? How do I get around that problem? How do I zip files together? I've seen people sending files, and let's assume they have 10, 15 files to send, and they send in those 10, 15 files individually, when you can really zip all of those files. If you had this knowledge on computer operations, zip it into one file, and you send that one file across. All of these things I've seen when, for example, you download a file, and as I mentioned, there's nothing on your computer that can open that file. There are online ways that you can go to online websites and open files online and then re-download it to your computer. But do office workers have the knowledge of these things? The reality is they don't. And it causes a lot of loss in productivity time. And it causes an unnecessary strain on the IT department. And as I mentioned before, setting up a projector, you'll be amazed that many persons just don't know how to do this effectively. Or sometimes they set it up and something happens, they're not sure how to solve that problem. And I have seen and this is where this probably gets a little serious, I have seen in some, I'm talking about official business meetings, official sessions where you're meeting with stakeholders and you're running a projector, and a simple thing comes up and really office workers don't know how to solve those problems. It causes big embarrassment as well. When if they had simple training where the company had invested a little bit in some training in these areas, could avoid problems and things like that. So that's a little bit about computer operations. Now what I want to get into more specifically is this area of efficiency and productivity. Now, as I mentioned, in this first half, we're going to have more of the discussion. In the second half, we'll have more of the demonstration, and I'll show you practically some of the things that we are talking about. One of the sad things about this is, I'm limited by 1 hour, and there's so much. I would love to show you all so many things that will make your life so much easier when you're using a computer. But I hope that it will encourage you to, join in at the SOCE and get some training for your organization. But so please remember that I'm just giving you little snippets, right? I really can't give you the full deal, but join in with us and you'll see some of these exciting things. So let's see computer efficiency and productivity. So there are Windows features, as I mentioned, which can increase your productivity. Now, a productivity feature, and I want to give you an example of just how this stacks up, because I don't think people realize how using simple Windows features can save you and stack up a lot of time. So let's give a simple example. If you use a Windows feature that saves, one Windows feature I'm talking about, that saves just about 10 or 20 seconds of your time, you would be surprised, because remember, you're using your computer consistently every day. You're doing this over and over repeatedly. You will be surprised at just how that time stacks up. That 10 seconds and that one feature, which saving you about 10 seconds to do a task. But remember, when we are using a computer, we're using, and we basically have a lot of repetition. So we're doing the same thing over and over again constantly. And when that 10 seconds adds up, 10 seconds, 10 seconds, 10 seconds, you'll be amazed at the end of the work week, you can save 2, 3, 4 hours of productivity time just by using these productivity features that I'm talking about. So let me give a good example of just how this time stacks up. There are Windows shortcuts on the keyboard, so you can press a shortcut on the keyboard to do a task instead of going with your mouse and clicking and doing all of that. You can just do a quick 2 press on your keyboard and you get the task done. Many times those save just about 5 seconds, right? 5 seconds, which in anybody's mind, that is a menial thing. In other words, if people don't know how to do that, if people don't understand how to use keyboard shortcuts, that is small thing, that is 5 seconds. Okay, let me give you a good example of this. And I tested this for myself, so I'm not talking about something that just make up from my head. I'm talking about from doing actual testing, and I'm talking about from my practical experience in IT here. One Windows shortcut that saves you 5 seconds. Think about this. I was doing, and I said I did a test on this. And while I was working doing a document, I checked to see, let me see just how often I use this particular shortcut. And while I was working on a document, and 1 hour, I was working on the document for 1 hour, right, constantly doing things. I used one keyboard shortcut 50 times. One keyboard shortcut because I've gotten in the habit of using keyboard shortcuts. I used that one keyboard shortcut, I'm talking about one, 50 times. So that is 50, right? In that 1 hour, that is 50 times by 5 seconds. So we have 250 seconds there now. All right. If I'm working on that document, and I'm not even going to use the entire day. If I'm working on documents for just half of my workday, the workday is 8 hours. So generally, only about half or less of that you may do actual on the computer. Some people actually go way more than the 4. But let's just, for argument's sake, 4 hours in the day. So that's 250 seconds, right, by 4. So that's 1,000 seconds. So that's 16 minutes overall in total. I've calculated all of this. So that's 16 minutes that I've saved in one working day. You might think, okay, that is no big deal. In 1 week, in one work week, that's 80 minutes. In 1 work week, that's 80 minutes. That's an hour and 20 minutes in 1 week that I have saved, and listen to what I'm saying, from using one keyboard shortcut. I use multiple keyboard shortcuts when I'm using the computer. And one keyboard shortcut, if you are working constantly at your computer on a document, and you just use one keyboard shortcut, imagine at the end of the work week, you save an hour and 20 minutes. Now, for employers, what I want you to think about is this. Multiply that now across all of your employees that are not using these things, that don't have the knowledge about these things. How much hours at the end of the week do you think that you are losing in productivity? Way more than you can even imagine, really. And you can save a lot of time. Now, what does that mean? I think any office worker would know that saving 1 hour is the difference between meeting a deadline or not. Saving 1 hour is the difference between a client getting something on time or not. Saving 1 hour of productivity time is the difference between something being completed on one day or something having to be moved forward to the next day. And I have saved at the end of my work week 120 minutes just by using one keyboard shortcut. Now, how could you imagine how effective and how efficient workplaces would be if employees were trained in these things, right? We have, before I go to web browsing, we have, as I mentioned, Windows features like split screen. So with split screen, I can put up multiple things on my screen, and I could be doing multiple tasks at the same time and not clicking back and forth between screens. That alone, and I said, I've compared these things. We're having to work on one document and then minimize and open something else and check something there, and then minimize that and bring back up the document and working in with Word. Doing that is the difference between completing that work in half an hour or 1 hour. There's using the clipboard. So I can use, for example, if I go on a website and I can copy, I know I need to get this information from the site, this information, that. I can copy all of those things from the website. All of that is saved on my clipboard. I can minimize that website. I don't have to open that up again. And I can have my document and I can use the clipboard, window key and V. And if whatever, all of those things that I've copied are saved in the clipboard. And whenever I want something, I can just pull it. I don't need to go back to the website and scroll through things, which I've very often seen people doing that, losing a lot of time in productivity. So that's in web browsing as well. You have people have multiple tabs open. There's a way to organize that. And what I do very often, when I'm using the computer, I have one window. I pull tabs into one window that deals if I'm looking for pictures. I pull all that in one tab. If I'm searching something, I put all of that in another window. And I can cycle through those windows using Windows 10 features. I've seen people using the web browser, and you could barely see. They have so many tabs open in that web browser. They could barely click on what they're trying to find properly. Because again, they don't have training in simple things like this. We spoke about the keyboard shortcuts as well, using Control A to select all the documents in one window. I see people still clicking and dragging and scrolling down. I've seen people doing that, clicking and dragging. They want to copy everything from one window. So they're dragging the mouse and highlighting everything and scrolling. Just press Control and A and I have everything one time. Now again, as I said, these things may sound, well, that is simple. Well, when people don't know about these things, the amount of productivity time that they are losing is tremendous. And some persons, they're trying to, a good example again, they're trying to select just a few things in a window. So they have a lot of files open up on the window. They just want to select about a few of them. So they're clicking and dragging. And sometimes when they're clicking and dragging, they're highlighting more that they want to. So they're trying their best. How could I get this thing to highlight only the section that I want? And there's a simple thing where you just hold Shift on your keyboard, you click and you press the right arrow, and it will keep cycling through until you reach exactly the files you want to copy or you want to move and things like that. And I'm just, as I said, I'm giving you a little snippet here, right? But there's so many things that I can discuss. File organization is something that people haven't been trained about. I think in almost every organization I've worked, I have seen the cluttered desktop. And I think probably everyone, other people that are listening in here will be saying, you know, I'm guilty of that. I've seen the cluttered desktop so many times, and really and truly, that is not an efficient way to organize your files on a computer. With a cluttered desktop, you're really supposed to be using the hierarchical filing method to organize your files, which saves finding files, saves a lot of the lost time in finding files. Other people don't even know how to find files on your computer. I'll give you a good example from my experience again. An office worker was working on a document. They spent about an hour plus working on this document, and afterwards they saved it somewhere. They weren't sure where on the computer they saved it. They can't find it. They don't know what to do. And they started doing over, now imagine this, they started doing over the document from scratch because they don't know where to find it. When really, Windows has the ability, if you understand how to do searches, you can perform a search and the computer will tell you, these are all the documents you worked on today, without you having to scroll through and click through or go anything like that. You can use Windows Search to find all of the documents, and you can save that as a search, and all of the documents you worked on today. So at the end of the workday, you can bring that up and see, okay, let me see all of the files I worked on today. The computer will show you all of that. You don't need to go clicking and looking and searching all over the place. But again, how many people are trained in these things? The computer, the CPU and the RAM, how to manage the processing power, how to manage memory. A lot of persons have multiple things running at the same time, right? Affecting, of course, the performance of the computer, affecting how fast the computer runs. But people haven't been trained in how to properly manage RAM, how to properly manage, and that's random access memory on your computer. Because your computer has to remember all of the things that you are doing. Your computer has to remember every single thing that you're doing. And people have multiple things open, using up processing power, using up RAM, but they don't really know how to maximize the CPU performance, how to maximize RAM, how to, okay, I can go into Task Manager, I could see, okay, these are the apps that are using up most of my computer's memory. Let me close off some of those apps. What does that result in? Faster computer performance and finishing tasks faster. And of course, we have Microsoft Office productivity, Word, Excel, PowerPoint. These are apps that people just have not been trained in. And there are so many features in these apps to get work done faster. So for example, in Word, people scrolling through, and I've seen this often, they're working on a document. So they reach on the top of the document, they type something there. They have to edit something in the middle of the document. They scroll down till they reach the middle. They type in something there. They have to go back to the top. They scroll back up. When really in Word, you can have that same one document side by side. And in the one portion that you're working on the left-hand side of the screen, the other portion of the document that you're working on the right-hand side of the screen. And you can copy across things. You can type something in one section, type something in the next section without wasting time scrolling back and forth like that. Table of contents. I can remember before I learned how to create table of contents in Word, I was doing a project, and I spent about an hour plus doing up the table of contents, because obviously you have to keep scrolling to see what page this part on, and you scroll back up and you put the page number there. And this is before, of course, I learned about these things. When I realized I can create a table of contents in about 5 seconds, I was like, all that time I wasted doing that. But you have to know how to do it. You have to know how it's done. You have to know how to use headers in Microsoft Word to be able to do that. And then, of course, there's Outlook, how to recall our emails. And people have seen this happen in IT. A lot of people call you frantically, I sent forward an email. I wasn't supposed to send that, and I send it to some clients there, and this is going to cause a problem. There's a way to recall your emails in Outlook. People don't even know about it. And a lot of problems being caused, again, because of a lack of basic knowledge. And in Excel, I mean, I can talk constantly about Excel. There are so many formulas that could be used and features in Excel that could be used to improve productivity, and people just are not aware of it. And things which could be done automatically for you and let your work be done in about half an hour, people taking an hour to do that. So let's wrap up this segment here. As I mentioned, let's talking quickly about computer maintenance and troubleshooting. Common computer errors, how to solve common computer errors on the computer. People don't know about that. In IT, have been called for simple things where, okay, the internet is down, right? There's an error come up on the screen, IT technician are not getting through the internet. When you come and you check the problem, a simple thing like the cable just getting slack, and you have to plug it back in. But again, people aren't trained and people don't understand about these simple things. They don't know how to troubleshoot computer errors, the computer sticking or the computer crash, how to use Task Manager to stop certain apps that causing your computer to crash. Simple common errors and how to troubleshoot these things people aren't aware of. How to identify problems. So my computer's moving very slowly. How can I isolate to identify what could be the cause of that problem and not getting internet? How can I isolate that problem and find out how to solve it? People aren't aware of that. I spoke to one IT technician because I did a lot of research. I'm speaking with multiple technicians before I came on to do this webinar to get an idea in the field. Yes, I've been in the field, but I wanted to get some experience from multiple persons. And there are some IT technicians that will tell you, listen, just cable and connections. In other words, how to connect up a computer for it to run properly. Simple things like a cable slack, this cable have to go into this part in the back of the computer for it to run. And they are telling me that multiple times, and I've experienced it multiple times, they have to come and do these things for the user. Now, we have to understand that this is productivity time that is being lost by workers not being trained in these particular areas. Connecting to the Wi-Fi, people don't know how to do that. Connecting to your network, people aren't aware of that. Simple PC maintenance, because now every office worker really, once you are using a computer, an office worker is supposed to have basic knowledge on how to maintain a computer. Businesses hire people and put them behind a computer, and they really have no knowledge on how to do proper maintenance of the computer, which causes problems, which makes a lot of work for IT technicians. And of course, there's communication with IT technician. When the IT technician call you and say, okay, listen, I need your computer's IP address. What is he talking about? How much RAM your computer has? What's the default gateway on that device? I need that to be able to solve a problem. People have no idea, and then IT technicians have to walk through people. Okay, all right, to get there, you have to click here. And people are like, okay, hold on, I'm trying to get it, I'm trying to find it. All right, now click there. Now, think about the time that is being lost by doing these things if people were trained in the knowledge of this. So before I move on to the examples, there is one scenario, and I was talking to an IT technician, and he said, in an organization in Trinidad, I wouldn't mention it, but in one organization, he said, when I'm called as an IT technician to solve a solution and solve these problems or solve it over the phone, and this one IT technician said that 75% of the time, 75% of the time, it's something that the user could solve on their own if they had some simple IT training. Now, think about that. 25% of the problems is something that you really need an IT technician for. 75% of the time for this technician in his organization, 75% of the challenges are things which the user can solve on their own. They don't need to call IT. Now, think about what we're talking about here. You have to call IT. You have to wait because there's a task that you're doing that you can't do because you're waiting to call IT to solve. That is time being lost. That is the IT department getting tied up in doing things which the user could fix on their own. You don't need an IT tech for that. So the IT department is being bogged down with a lot of extra work, which really and truly they don't have to be doing, losing productivity with the IT department, losing productivity with the actual worker. And as I said, compile all of what I've mentioned today and just think about how much hours are being lost in productivity at the end of a work week. So that's the end of my segment there. What I'm going to do after this is just show you some quick examples. This will be very fast to show you some quick examples of some of the things that I spoke about. But I hope that that little segment there would give you an indication of how serious this problem is. As I said, I'll show you in the examples some of these things that you can use to increase your productivity. But I hope it has opened our minds to see just how serious this problem is and just how important it is for you as a worker and also organizations, managers, to ensure that they have IT training for their workers, because you're losing hours of productivity every week and you don't even know it. So that's the end of my first segment. We can take any quick questions or comments. So I'll hand over to you now, Lisa.
Can you hear me? Ladies and gentlemen, you can hear me? Joseph, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can hear you now, Lisa.
Okay, great, wonderful. Thank you very much for that informational session. I have learned a lot thus far, and I'm looking forward to the quick tips that you're going to share with us in terms of how we could save time in doing our work in the modern workforce. But I want to open the floor to our attendees here. Perhaps there are employers or employees who may have some concerns or would like to pose some questions to our facilitator. This is your time to feel free to ask your questions. So we'll just leave the floor open for a minute or so the brave persons could come forth and ask their questions while Joseph prepares for the second segment, where he will actually give us some practical tips based on the challenges that were identified. Anyone? Or perhaps I can ask the attendees a question. Thus far, can you agree with Joseph that there are things that we are doing in the workplace that we can do more effectively and efficiently? Mr. Palmer, how about you? Are you there? Would you agree with what has been presented thus far?
Yes, I am here. I am here. All right. Okay. In respect to what he just said, there were some critical points that he made. But as an IT instructor myself, what I have realized is that it's not just only that they must be trained to use those programs, But basically, there is something that I use, and my students will tell you, I always make mention of that, something called critical thinking. And we don't really engage that much in the learning process. Because as he rightfully said, there are certain things that if they were trained, they would have known. But also with the critical thinking, there are certain things that are self-explanatory. Like when you see a word, the word itself speaks as to what you're supposed to do. So if the word says like open, like they want to retrieve a document and they don't know what to click to retrieve this document, and there is a word that says open, by the word itself open, it says that this is what you should click on to open the document. And one may not realize that if I click open, then that means to open my document, rather than me specifically telling you click on open. If I didn't tell you that, you may not have known. But with critical thinking, when you look at the word open, it's self-explanatory. You can go ahead and click on open. And then as he said earlier too, that sometimes we can't find our documents. The reason is because we are so into the shortcuts that we just want to click on one thing and everything is done for us. So when we go to save a document, the program by default saves the document in an area called documents. We are not concerned about that. We just want to save it. So we click save, it saves. We're good. Next day, when we come to look for the document, we can't find it because we don't make ourselves aware, okay, where is this document saved? How do I access the location where it is saved? You know, so these things are sometimes inhibited by our natural inclination for shortcuts.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Palmer, for sharing and for contributing to the session. I think the one of the things that I learned from your contribution is that there is an onus on us, even though Joseph is sharing some tips with us, and even though the tool itself may be instructive in our daily lives, there is an onus on us to explore critical thinking while using the tool at the same time. So I appreciate your sharing. Is there anyone else who would like to make a contribution before we go back to Joseph, who will share with us on some practical tips that we can immediately ensure? Okay, if there's no one else, Joseph, I now look forward to those tips. I am telling you all, I am learning so much. And Joseph shared an experience there about the table of contents. And I'm sure many people probably have learned that there is a feature, but you have to know how to use headers. And he also mentioned about scrolling all the way down to a document. Is there anyone else guilty of doing that? That's a tip I learned from Joseph today. So Joseph, I now hand over to you as we listen and learn today. Thank you.
Thanks so much, and let's get back our presentation again. So this is the demonstration aspect now. It is a little bit of the fun part where we can see some things, and as I said, some of these things, simple things, but again, people aren't aware of it. And the challenge is, the challenge is the amount of productivity time that we are losing because of that. So let's look at some of these. So here we have a simple scenario of a screen, right? So normally, let's see what happens here. So normally this is a person using a computer. So they'll be using this document here, right? They're scrolling back and forth. Then they will jump in here. So I'm jumping into my mailbox here. There may be something, there's the email I got about the webinar. So there may be something here that I need to check. So I'll notice, I'll open up this next screen here and I'll check that out. See some information. Maybe I have to use that in my documents. I open up the document again, or I may be doing a search as well on Google. So as you're seeing there, what the user is doing here is keep clicking between windows. I open that, click that window, click the other window. It brings up the entire, it fills up the entire screen, and I work there, and I'm jumping back and forth between windows. This takes up a lot of productivity time. Now, what I can simply do instead is we can drag this window, and you're going to see that coming here now. So this is a person just jumping between windows, as I mentioned, right? So instead of functioning like that, so here I am, and I put this window, I pin it to the left-hand side. I open up my mailbox here. I'm working there. And notice immediately, I don't need to be jumping back and forth between windows. Now, let me tell you something again. These things look so simple. The amount of time that you are going to save doing this. So when I have to copy something from one mail here, this mail here, and I have to copy it over into my document, or I'm working with these two documents at the same time, I don't need to be jumping over between screens like that, which saves a lot of time. And even if I wanted, I could drag that to the top right-hand side corner, which puts that email, because maybe I only need to see a little portion of that. I put it to the top right-hand side, and I have my Google search here because I'm doing some searching as well on the internet. So I have my searching here. I could search, I get my results while I'm typing my document here. And at the same time, I have my email in the top right-hand corner. I'm working with all these three things at the same time, saving me time and saving me productivity. All I had to do was drag it to the left-hand side of the screen, or you can press the window key on the keyboard and press the left arrow. So that's one. There's the clipboard. So here I am, notice, I have to get some information from this email. So I'm going to copy, as you're seeing there, copy the date, I copy the webinar session, and I copy the name of the person. That's me, Mr. Alexander there. So I'm using this document, and I constantly have to use that information over and over again. And what you have people doing is they'll open up the document, type it out, and go back somewhere else and copy it again a second time and come back and right-click and paste, and they jump in like that back and forth. What many people don't realize is that everything that you copy is saved to a clipboard in Windows. And I can open up my clipboard, and as you can see there, I press the window key and V, and I open up my clipboard, and now my clipboard has shown me everything that I have copied thus far is saved right here in my clipboard. So now while I'm using my document, whatever I type in my document, whatever I want in my clipboard, I can select it, and it will paste it into the document that I'm working with. Again, what does that mean? It means save time having to go back and forth. And what some people do, and I've seen this in workplaces, they copy the same thing about 10, 15, 20 times because they keep using that same information. So they're copying it about 10, 15, 20 times when really and truly, you just need to copy it once. It's in your clipboard whenever you need it. You open up your clipboard with Windows key and V, and you work with all these things that you have saved to your clipboard. Another thing again is zooming. And this is a classic one. I don't know why, and this is a serious one as well, because constantly you see people all over workplaces leaning into computer screens like this and doing their work like that. Not only is that inefficient, but there's serious harm that you're doing to your back there. And that's a whole next topic that we can talk about. Obviously, we don't have the time for that, about wrong postures that people use while working at a computer. And many times, so here I am, again, I'm working in my three windows. And all I have to do is press the window key on my keyboard and the plus sign on the keyboard. And notice I can zoom in there. I don't need to lean over. I don't need to squint over. I don't need to do any of that. And notice it will zoom wherever my mouse is, it will zoom in. So I'm moving my mouse. So I move my mouse there, I press the window key, and the plus sign, it zooms in whatever I need to see there. And I press window key on minus side, and I zoom back out. I want to zoom in the thing that I'm searching online, window key plus sign, window key minus sign. And all of that without me having to lean forward. And very often, if it's too small, I can zoom in twice. I don't need to stretch over and lean over, guys. You don't need to do that. You're wasting a lot of productivity and you're doing harm to yourself. And this also works. A classic place where I see people doing that is in a scenario like this. So notice how small this is. And generally, when you're browsing files, they will be small like that. And people squint over and bend over and things like that. When all I can do is the same thing. Window key plus sign. And I zoom in. And if that's still too small, I press window key plus sign again twice. And it will zoom in more times, like I did it twice here. I don't need to lean over. I don't need to squint. I don't need to do any of that. all of that is completed very, very easily for me by the computer using simple productivity tools that people don't know about, and I have it on top of a window key and the plus or minus sign. Let's look at another one. File searching, which I mentioned before. So here I am, and these are the features. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit so you can see. Right. So here I am in a file search, and you can press the window key and F while you are using the File Explorer. And you can type a search if you want to search for a file. But very often, sometimes people forget the name that they saved the file by or something like that. Notice in these search tools here how I can search. I can search if I wanted by the kind of file. So if I want to find only documents, I can do that search as you're seeing here. And I can search for only documents, and the computer will, Windows will search for only documents for me, things like Word, PDF, and things like that. So if I knew, all right, I worked on a document today, I don't know where it's saved, I don't know what happened to it, I can just use the quick search feature. I don't need to stress myself over that. Right? So as you see here, and it's anything that you want. It could be not only files, pictures, anything that you want, you can search. You could also search by file size. So if I know, for example, there's a video file and it's a big video, I can change to the size of the file and it will search by size. And one of the best things that we have is you can search by the date. People don't realize this, but look at that. I can just search and I can say, okay, all the files I worked on today, so I can say kind, document, date modified today, and it will bring up for me all of those things, all of the documents. You'd even have to know where you saved it. You could forget where you saved it. It will bring it up for you, but you also have to understand file paths. As you're seeing on this part of the screen, it's giving me the file path, where exactly the file is located on the computer. A lot of people don't know how to read file paths. All of that is training that we offer. It could be yesterday, as you're seeing there. And what you can also do is save the search, as you're seeing here. So I can save a search, and this is something that I often do. I save a search for documents, right, that I have done by the day. So I can save date modified today, kind, document, and at the end of my workday, I can pull this up. It doesn't matter where. I could have saved it in multiple places all over my computer. The computer will bring up for me and show me, today, these are all the documents that you worked on, and these are all of the locations where you save those documents to, saving a lot of time, maximizing on efficiency. Let's jump through something again. Managing performance in Task Manager. A lot of people don't know how to use the Task Manager. Some people use the Control, Alt, and Delete method, which is a little two-step method. You could really do it in one step with Control, Shift, and Escape. So as you can see that, I'm working here. I find the computer is moving slowly. I press Control, Shift, and Escape. It brings up the Task Manager for me immediately. Now this Task Manager here is going to show me exactly, remember we spoke about the CPU and RAM and how tasks are using up CPU and using up RAM. Well, I can see all of the tasks. So while I was recording this, as you can see here, here's Windows Desktop Manager. Let me show you a little example of what was taking place while I was recording this. Right, so while I was doing this, I was using the screen recorder, and as you can see, I selected the CPU section. And this actually categorizes for me what are the applications that are using most of my processing power. So it told me here right now, and while I was doing this, I was recording the screen, so that was obviously using most of the processing power. It brought up for me, Microsoft Office screen recorder is using 32% of your computer's processing power. And it can tell me how much memory on my computer it's utilizing as well. Now, this using and understanding Task Manager is very important for office workers, because with this, I can simply pull up my Task Manager. I can see the applications that are causing my computer to use up too many tasks or cause it to operate slowly. And I can say, okay, oh, this is the task that has the computer running so slow. Okay, I will end that task. Very often when I'm doing my work, I use Task Manager multiple times to maximize on my computer's performance. A lot of people don't know about this or don't even understand how to use Task Manager properly. And that results in computers moving very, very slowly. I can even go into Performance tab in the Task Manager. And as you can see, I can see exactly how much of my processing power is being used, how much memory is being used. And a very nifty feature that I often use is Wi-Fi. Now, I wasn't using much Wi-Fi at the time when I was recording this, but I can see if I am using up a lot of my bandwidth while I am using Wi-Fi or while I'm connected to the company network. And this helps me a lot in understanding, okay, if something is taking very long. Sometimes there are programs that are using your Wi-Fi and you don't even realize. There are programs that are using a lot of your bandwidth and you don't realize. All of that will show up in Task Manager. And because I know how to use this, when there's a program that's using up a lot of my data, a lot of my Wi-Fi, I can identify it. I can say, okay, I'm going to close that application because it's causing my downloads to take too long. I mean, I can speak so much about that, but again, I'm just giving you all some very, very quick tips here, very quick. Find and replace, a very simple, basic feature in Microsoft Word. And sometimes a person has a document, and all over in the document, let's assume they typed a person's name. I just did this quick method here, but all over the document, they typed a person's name, and they realize afterwards, oh my, I spelled the person's name incorrectly, or I have the person's name wrong. And you have office workers scrolling through the document, trying to find and make sure they find the person's name and they change it, wasting time really. When of course I can just use find and replace in Microsoft Word. So as you see, I'm in Word here. I'm in the Home tab. I go to editing here, as you can see. I go to replace. And I say what? Find wherever the name Joseph is present and replace it with the name Kevin because I had the person's name wrong. And I select, as you can see there, replace all. And it does that for me automatically. I don't need to miss out and I forget places. And this actually also works in Outlook as well. So sometimes people send emails with wrong things in it because they try to peruse through the email and find things which really is not effective. You could use find and replace. I'm doing this very quickly. Here's the document views one I was talking about because our time, there's so much I want to show you all, but our time, this is an encouragement, I hope, for you all to sign up for some of these courses that we have. Here's a document I'm scrolling through. So I'm editing this document, right? So I edit here, I type, I do my edit one, and I scroll down somewhere, and this is a common thing people do. I scroll all the way to the bottom. So I'm gonna edit something here. So I type here, I edit the bottom of the document. And then what do I have to do? I have to edit something in the top part again. I scroll up again, or maybe I have to edit something midway. I scroll to there, I edit it, and then I scroll up again, really wasting great time that you could have saved if you understand Office productivity. So let's use the Office productivity. So what do? We go to the View tab in Microsoft Office. Notice that we go here, we create a new window. So now you're not seeing it yet, but you'll see it. A new window is created of this same document. And now when I go side by side, I just selected there in side by side. And now here's the same document. This is the same one document in Microsoft Word, and I have it side by side. I can scroll it together at the same time. If I wanted, I could have had multiple documents. I could have a second document here. I'm working in this one, and I'm working in the second document at the same time, not minimizing, maximizing right through, no. Or with the same document, as you're seeing here, I can edit the top portion of the document, and I'm going to take off synchronous scrolling, so the two won't scroll at the same time. So now I go to, sorry, let me bring that back. Right, so now I go to the portion in the document that I want to edit. So I want to edit this portion on the left-hand side. I leave that portion there. And I want to edit another part of the document. So I go to that section. That's what you're seeing here. So now, this is the same document I'm working in. And look at what I'm doing now. I can edit in one portion here. I can edit in this portion here. I can come back and edit in this portion right here and type whatever I want to type in that section. I can come back and type in this section here of the same document. I don't have to waste my time scrolling back and forth and using up precious productivity time. Let's look at this typical one here, and I'll probably end with this formula because our time, I'm so sorry, I wish I could have shared more things with you all, but our time has gone away so quickly. Here's a formula. Now look at something here. And this is a good, because very often people use Excel and they don't understand how to use formulas, and we do training in this capacity. So here's a simple class 1, and these are the grades of the students here, right? Now what I want is I want Excel to tell me the total people that have passed. Here's the pass mark, that is 70. So I'm going to type my formula here. So I put equal sign, count if, and I say I want you to count these section here. So I want you to count those cells from B4 to B9. And if it's greater than or equal to 70, I want you to count it. So you see it tells me 4 persons have a mark that is greater than or equal to 70. And I can do the same thing for the fail portion. For those who didn't pass, the same thing, the count if. I select the cells and I say, okay, for those who have less than 70, as you see, I'm typing there. And now it does that for me. So a lot of people, some people know about this, some people don't, but here's where the complex part comes in. A lot of people don't realize that really and truly, that is not an effective way to type that formula. And why is that so? What about if the pass mark changes? So we change the pass mark to 50 now. What would I have to do? I would have to go back and type over that formula another time. A lot of people make this error in Excel where they type formulas and then they have to change something and they have to type over the formula a second time. So you see, I have to go and I have to keep changing. But instead of that, what can I do? I can tell Excel, reference this cell, which is the pass mark here. So notice it's currently 50. Reference this cell as the pass mark. And I could constantly, I can change this to 50, I can change it to 70, and automatically Excel is going to keep updating for me. So how I did it, as you can see there, I put the ampersand, and again, these things may sound complex to you, but we train with all of these things in Excel. So let me give you a little indication of when I'm finished. So you see, I put ampersand and I reference the cell C1. So now notice it's at 50. It changes. It's the pass mark, total pass 6, total fail is 0. And now I don't need to go over and change over everything. I change it to 70. Notice it changed automatically. I change the pass mark to 50 again. Notice it changed automatically. I don't have to go back and type over the formula multiple times. And these are features in Excel that many persons don't know about, right? Sorry about that there. Yeah, many persons don't know about these features. And as a result of that, I've seen many instructors typing. Some of them are aware of formulas. They type in over formulas multiple times. Some of them aren't even aware of formulas at all. And they're actually sitting down and writing out the pass mark and checking these things, which really and truly they should not be doing. But here's another scenario situation in Excel which may interest us. So as I was showing there, as I keep changing, it changes automatically. But here's another scenario. I want people to take note of this. I want to put the result for each individual student. So I want Excel to tell me whether this person passed or whether this person did not pass. Sorry about that. Yeah, I want Excel to tell me whether this person passed or whether this person didn't pass. So I'm typing a formula, and many people are familiar with this formula. So I put equal sign, if, and I say the condition, if, look at it, cell B4 is greater than or equal to cell C1, I want you to put pass, and I put comma, and I want you to put reset. That's if they don't have or they haven't met the requirements. Now look at something here, right? Okay, I want to copy that formula now, right? I want to copy that formula so that it will work for all of these students. This is the common way that people do. So they copy the formula by dragging But look at something here immediately. Look at something here. It was copied incorrectly. Look at that. It says here the person has 80 marks, which is over the 70, but it's saying reset. Something is wrong there. And this is where people have to learn about absolute cell referencing. And we teach about this in Excel. People don't know about relative and absolute cell referencing. Because what Excel does is relative self-referencing. And what that means is, very simply, when I click and I drag and I copy that formula, Excel is going to automatically change the cells. So let's look at a good example here. Notice the formula keeps changing in those cells. It's no longer cell C1 it's referencing anymore. It goes down to C2, C3, and that is because of something called relative cell referencing. Again, I'm not going to go into the details of it. It's just a quick preview, right? So the proper method, sorry about that again. The proper method is to do absolute cell referencing. You're supposed to use absolute cell referencing when you don't want the cell to change. A lot of people aren't aware of how to do that. But that is what we will teach if you had done a proper Excel course. So now I'm going to do the absolute cell referencing. So you notice there is now, when I copy this formula, because I have an absolute cell reference, when I copy that formula now, notice it does it correctly. Many persons don't understand the difference between absolute and relative referencing in Excel, and it causes a lot of problems. And again, forgive me for going through this so quickly. It's because I'm trying to give you all a quick snippet, and we'll end with Outlook. I probably wouldn't go through this much. What I was just going to show in this video is that in Outlook, if I sent an email and there's a problem with it and I realize, wow, I wasn't supposed to send that, I can go back into Outlook, I could recall that email. If someone sent me an email and they asked me to do something, I can tell Excel, I can go into Excel and change the settings and say, listen, I want you to remind me about this email and this thing that I have to do in the email. Remind me about this at this particular time. All of that could be done in Excel. There's also specific ways to search in Excel. Very often, I've had as an IT technician, people call me, there's an email, it's somewhere in my inbox, but I don't know how to find it. And that's because they haven't been trained on how to use the search feature in Excel and the different ways that you can do multiple searches in Excel, in Outlook, sorry, I say in Excel. So I'm talking about that before, but multiple features in Outlook of where I can find exactly what I want, right? So that is the end of my little training segment. I hope it was helpful to you. I know we went a little over time. It's only because I really wanted to show you all a lot of these features here. But if you are interested in these things, again, you can sign up with the SOCE, right? Sign up with the SOCE. And there are a lot of benefits to signing up with us. And let's just touch on that quickly. Why should you join the SOCE to do your training? You can choose between physical, online, or blended learning. So if you want the instructor to come into the organization, you can have that. If you want it online only, you can have that. If you want a mixed approach, you can have that. You can get customized training schedules. So if you want to say, listen, I want my training in my organization to be Tuesdays and Thursdays or Mondays and Wednesdays, you can have that. We have one-day training seminars where if you want to learn something just in one day, right? You don't have the time to go through the entire course. We have one-day seminars, a quick one-day seminar, how to learn, how to use Zoom, how to use Teams. You can give you one-day training seminars. In all our courses, we give you free training booklets and materials. And what that means is at the end of the session, you always have a material to reference back to use. You can fast track your learning if you want. If you want to learn a course, let's say it's 24 hours, and you say, listen, we don't have that time. We want to cover that in 18 hours. We can do fast track for you. We also have discount packages. If you take more than one multiple courses, you can get discounts. And you can also have training requests where you can contact us and say, listen, we want to get training for this particular program for an organization. And we can see about sourcing instructors to teach you in that regard. So that's it for me. I hope the session was helpful to you, and I hand over again to you, Lisa.
Okay, thank you very much, Joseph. I believe that it was quite instructional and informative. I've certainly learned a lot. And I trust that everyone here got an opportunity, get a snippet, just a trailer in terms of what the SOCE does and the types of training we offer, especially under our computer business series. So ladies and gentlemen, I know we went a little over the time, but I want to thank you for your commitment and staying through the course of this webinar. And I look forward to receiving your feedback on it. I want to thank the members of the SOCE team who are currently working in the background to make sure that all persons join the forum, and they will be sending you a customer feedback form to share with us all the tips, all the things that you liked about the webinar and the things that you thought we should improve. So if there are no further questions, I would like to say thanks again and have a wonderful day. If there are questions, stay on the forum and we will try to address them as best as we can. Thank you. Okay, I think there are no questions. So ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful day and thank you for joining the SOCE.